Life is hard. Either way, you just get to choose what kind of hard you want to have. Today, I'm sitting down with someone very special, not only because of his incredible career trajectory, but also because he'll be leading Wall Street Mastermind into its next chapter. Max Adams started his career in investment banking at Lazard and later Qatalyst Partners. Now he's pursuing a dual degree at Stanford GSB and Harvard Kennedy School. So let's start from the beginning.
I was able to have like a long-term goal that I knew was going to be really hard to reach. And that was pretty inspiring to me because it meant that I had to plan carefully to get there. And she like wakes up and she's like, Max, like, why are you calling me? I'm like, I actually think I'm going to die because I'm so tired.
Don't let other people impose their limiting beliefs on you. If you have something that you truly care about, there's almost always a way to make it happen.
This is the chance to have a better life, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's living on a boat in the Mediterranean or being able to donate tons of money to help kids who are in poverty around the world, like whatever it looks like for you. Working in banking, working in PE, working in finance really gets that. There's nothing I'd rather be doing than help you specifically figure out what you need to do to get to the job that you're looking to have.
What do you want them to know about who you are and why you're doing this?
Yeah, no, it's a really important question because
Welcome to another episode of Wall Street Diaries, a podcast about extraordinary individuals who launch their careers on Wall Street and use that experience as a springboard to build world class careers. We bring you the stories of people who turned that foundation into something remarkable. Today, I'm sitting down with someone very special, not only because of his incredible career trajectory, but also because he'll be leading Wall Street Mastermind into its next chapter. Max Adams started his career in investment banking at Lazard and later Qatalyst Partners, two of the most prestigious firms in the industry. He then moved into private equity at Vector Capital, where he spent 3 years investing in technology businesses. Now he's pursuing a dual degree at Stanford GSB and Harvard Kennedy School, and where he's an RJ Miller Scholar. During that time, he's also been a prolific finance coach, helping hundreds of students break into top investment banks as well as private equity. Max will be taking over as the head coach and face of Wall Street Mastermind, helping the next generation of students break into investment banking and build the kind of careers we talk about on the show every single week. So, with that said, Max, I want to welcome you to the podcast, and I'm excited to talk to you about your background and your story and who you are, and just kind of introduce you to our audience.
yeah, thanks, Sam. Really excited to be here and looking forward to having a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start from the beginning. When you were in college at BYU, which is where you went, did you always know you wanted to work in investment banking?
Yeah, great question. And short answer is absolutely not. I grew up not knowing what the word investment banking was, and really the only reason I happened to end up in investment banking was I got lucky and I had a little bit of entrepreneurial experience that pointed me towards finance. And so, backing up a little bit, while I was in high school, I actually started a canoe rental business of all things to help pay for college. It was a little business called Adventure Max Rentals, and the proudest moment of my high school career with this canoe rental business was at the end. I sold it to another student who was excited to make some money for school, and it was the world's smallest M&A deal ever, but it got me a little hooked to the world of numbers and finance and dollars and cents and things like that. And so when I went to school, I very much wanted to learn more about that. And so I signed up for finance. I signed up for all the clubs, you know the drill, and happened to stumble on the investment banking club in particular, which I personally at the time thought was some of the smartest, some of the most capable, some of the most interesting people in the finance program. And that kind of gravitated me towards the field.
That's funny. Did you get a good multiple on that?
I'm embarrassed to say what it was, but basically it ended up being about one times assets. So not really.
Okay, well, that was before your banking days, so that is your in your defense. I think excusable. um,
Exactly. No chance I could have negotiated that without even be able to DCF in the first place. So it was hard.
so then you, I guess in college, you had some pretty interesting experiences. I'm not sure. I guess it's an internship, sort of, but I know you worked at the University Growth Fund, which maybe you can kind of explain what that is to people for those who are not familiar. But it's a very cool program. And then also Grandeur Peak Advisors, and then you also actually then worked in kind of software like SaaS sales, right, at Lucid before you actually started banking. So, talk about kind of each of those experiences and what made you want to do those things. And was there like a underlying theme or kind of strategy in terms of how you went about building your resume?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a little bit confusing when you look at it. I did private markets, I did public markets, I did software sales. So really, what ties it together is I wanted to get as much experience in all forms as possible before going into banking. Because, like I mentioned, as soon as I got involved with the investment banking club and sold this little business, I started to realize that banking was where I was going to end up longer term. And so in the near term, I just wanted to fill out that skill set. And so the first place that I started was, like you mentioned, University Growth Fund. And this is a fun program based in Utah where I was going to school, where it's basically a miniature VC fund designed specifically to help students get investing experience. And so it's sort of like a student investing club at a school, but it's a lot bigger than that. They've got millions of dollars of capital and some serious like institutional investors backing it, and they get on really, really incredible deals. Like I think when I was there, we were just investing in like Snapchat and Spotify back in the day. Um, and so I joined this program with the intention of learning a little bit about sourcing and about valuation and about negotiating with founders and whatnot. And that gave me a taste for the private markets. But I also wanted to learn about public markets, just explore equity capital markets, explore the stock market, explore stocks. And so I spent also about a year at Grandeur Peak Advisors. And you're right that these weren't really internships like, I was getting paid and it was working 20 hours a week or something like that. And so it was pretty busy. But at Grandeur Peak, I really got an interesting experience working with public companies in emerging small cap markets. And so we're working with random businesses like concrete manufacturers in Egypt and food distributors in Vietnam or something like that. And it was a really, really gritty experience of like getting into the details on IFRS and GAAP and understanding how public markets businesses work and getting started with Excel, frankly, for the first time. And so that got me the finance skill set that I was looking to prep for, so I could be prepared to go into banking. But then there's this other piece about Lucid, right? And so the thinking there was I knew I wanted to build a long-term career in finance, and I'm sure you know this, Sam, but every career in finance is sales at the end of the day, right? And so whether you're a banker trying to sell companies, whether you're a PE person trying to convince a CEO to let them take over your business, whether you're raising money from LPs, it's all sales. And so that was sort of the thinking where I was like, okay, I'm going to be in tech and I want to know how to sell. Why not just go be a sales rep?
Mm.
And so I worked at Lucid Software, which is a B2B SaaS business that does diagramming software, and finagled my way onto their strategic accounts team, where I was able to work with some of their largest, multi-million dollar accounts, working on their biggest deals, and that was an incredible experience where I got experience cold calling people, got experience, talking with customers, working through buying cycles, and really practicing selling. And frankly, that was very, very helpful later on in finance when it came to even sourcing a deal while I was at Vector.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what stands out to me about what you just said is that even at a very young age, you kind of had everything really just well planned out. I don't feel like most students who are thinking about going into a career on Wall Street, trying to break into investment banking, maybe even someday trying to break into private equity. People do think about those things, but I don't think most people. I haven't really seen people uh, think to themselves like, okay, well, now that I have my finance job secured, let me go learn how to do sales because this is
Mhm.
going to be a useful skill down the line, which it absolutely is. Like you're 1,000% right. I'm just saying I don't really see most college students think that way. So that's like really interesting to me to hear you say that. Like
Mhm.
what do you think it is that like were you have you just always been that way, kind of thinking like three steps ahead, or like what caused you to kind of come to that conclusion of like, hey, I should go and learn how to do sales?
Yeah, no, it's a funny question, and I do want to caveat that I'm probably having a little bit of revisionist history. It all sounds kind of neat in retrospect, but as I was going through it, to some extent, it was just clicking on internships and seeing what looked good. And so that said, though, like I seriously did have a thesis about sales. That was probably the one good idea I had in college was learning that I needed to do some sales stuff. And so I think part of this is that I was able to have like a long term goal that I knew was going to be really hard to reach. And that was pretty inspiring to me because it meant that I had to plan carefully to get there. And so, just to explain what I mean a little bit more, is like I was trying to come from a background that like nobody in my family knew anything about finance. BYU is not exactly a target school for banking, although it's frankly getting better. Uh, and like I didn't have any of the criteria, any of the skill set, any of the qualifications to succeed in banking. So if I said, okay, if I want to like build a career in finance, that's the long term goal. I can't just coast. Like I actually have to think about this. I have to like plan this out. And so every day during college, I would wake up and I would start just by saying like today I'm going to connect my long-term goals with my short-term actions. And then I would sort of just go through my calendar. I would say like does this tie back? Does this tie back? Does this tie back? And so I was just relentlessly focused on bridging the gap between where I wanted to be and where I was. And that's not rocket scientist. I'm not a genius or anything. It was just sitting down and taking a couple minutes every day to actually think about that.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, although again I would say I don't think it's very common for college students to do stuff like that in my experience, and I've worked with a lot of college students. I think like yes, like the difference between people who are successful and high performing versus those who are not a lot of times does come down to um, set like goal setting,
Mhm.
knowing like what am I working towards. But then that's probably the easy part because we all know everybody sets goals, everybody has new year resolutions, most people
Mhm.
never keep their new year resolutions, and so you can set goals all you want. It doesn't really matter if you don't actually do something about it and act on it. And
Mhm.
that second part is, you know, how you allocate your time, and does the way you spend your time actually align with what you say your goals are, which that requires, I
Mhm.
think, attention and discipline, quite frankly, because sometimes doing the things that will get you to your goals is not always necessarily fun. In fact,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to do some pretty harsh stuff if you want to be successful, because, but otherwise, by definition, everyone would already be there. Uh,
Mhm.
and so I think, from what you're describing, it sounds like you've always been very intentional about how you go about your day and how you go about your business. And I think I'm sure that's probably been a big part of why you've been so successful. Um,
You're kind
and
to
I
say
guess,
that.
yeah, yeah, no. And so I guess that's a kind of good segue into the next thing I wanted to ask you, which is obviously to your point, like at least at the time when you were at BYU, it's not really like a traditional Wall Street target school, right? And
Mhm.
so, what were some of the like? I think they're getting better now, but this is like long after you graduated. So, like, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you were trying to break into Wall Street, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and like you're saying, it's been really fun to me as an alumni as I've continued to like recruit there and stuff, just to see the quality expanding. Like, and I think this is happening across the nation where schools, like, there are more investment banking clubs. Students are just getting better than they were back in the day, which is hard because there's many more of them and they're also getting better. And so the competition is just through the roof these days in getting these positions. But back when I was there, it was very much a little bit of a stretch to imagine getting into the banks and the careers that I was able to some extent. And frankly, my family background was the same way too. Like, when I first told my parents I was going into investment banking, I joke that they basically were like, "Oh, you're going to be a bank teller," and like, frankly, I didn't know what banking was. They didn't know what banking was, and so the real first thing that I had to overcome was just a lack of connections. And
Mm,
so it wasn't one of those situations where I could pull in some favors and just get my uncle, who is a managing director at Morgan Stanley, to like talk with me and things like that. And that's great if that's you. Like, awesome. I'm so happy that you've got that. But for me, the first thing I had to do was get smart on networking.
yeah.
And so I can talk way more about that, but like, really, really just had to build out those networking flywheels, fly out to San Francisco and meet people in person, fly out to New York, meet people in person. But the second thing that's very related is that there wasn't so much on-site recruiting. And so, unlike if you're at Wharton and there's 10 banks coming in every week, like, you really have to get in front of them and you really have to make sure that you're sending in your resume to their HR people, because they're not always just going to have a resume drop. And then that's also kind of exacerbated by the fact that it's not geographically proximate. Like, I'm sure you've been to Utah for skiing or mountains at some point, and it's frankly quite far from any major banking center. And so you
Mm,
really have to work your butt off to actually get out to one of the coasts to do some of these recruitings, and it costs them a little bit more money to fly you out than it does someone who's at NYU, and it requires you to spend your minimum wage dollar jobs that you're working in college on a $200 flight back and forth to San Francisco. Like, it's hard. But the thing I will say, though, is that there's a good alumni network that really benefited me. Like, people are loyal, they're willing to help, and I am too. And then, second, it's got enough of a brand, enough of a basis to get past the resume screen. And so, even if it's not the top name school that's just going to get you the job, it's definitely good enough to get past the resume screen, and then you can thrive from there, or not, depending on how good you are.
yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Because in our program, we work with a lot of non-target school students. I mean, I haven't checked this recently, but the last time I looked at this data, the breakdown was something like 45% of our students are from target schools, 20% from semi-target schools, and basically the other 35% were from non-target schools. So it's actually like pretty
Yeah,
even split. Um,
yeah,
and what we found is that contrary to what you might read online in forums and things like that, where everybody makes you feel like, oh, if you go to a target school, then you have a shot. If you go to a non-target school, then you have almost no shot. I feel like a lot of times you read stuff like that,
yeah,
which can really discourage the non-target school students from even attempting,
yeah.
because it's like, what's the point if the chances are so low. But what
Hmm.
we've seen from working with over 2,100 students at this point is that it is absolutely possible to break in from a non-target school. Obviously, if you go to a target school versus a non-target school, and if there are two candidates that are exactly the same, and one goes
Hmm.
to a target school and one goes to a non-target school, of course, all else equal, the guy at the target school does have some advantages that's going to make it easier for them, relatively speaking, right? But
Hmm.
the truth of the matter is, it's still not easy, even if you are at a target school. And
Yep.
just because you are at a target school, there are so many students who go to target schools and try really hard and don't get into this field.
Yeah.
And then there are also actually plenty of non-target school students who break in despite being at a non-target school, and the only difference is just like how prepared they are,
Yep.
and do they have the knowledge that they need to be successful in this recruiting process. Whether and that could be knowledge around how to get the relevant internships they need to build up their resume. That could be knowledge around how to network effectively and build your professional network and get referrals. That could be knowledge around how to answer behavioral questions, technical questions. All of these things can be learned.
Yeah.
um, they're a little bit harder to learn if you go to a non-target school where you don't have many people around you thinking about or talking about these kinds of things versus you are going to a target school and there's a lot more of that recruiting culture and there's just you're surrounded by people who are constantly talking about this stuff like so it does make it a little bit more difficult but
Yeah.
um, the way you level the playing field is one by obviously outworking other people. That's a given, but two, you can go out of your way to go and seek out the information that you need, right, and not just rely on your school or your immediate environment if it's not providing that to you. Um,
Hmm.
so anyway, I just want to kind of give a word of encouragement to all the non-target schools
Yeah.
out there. Like, um, we talked about kind of Max's resume earlier. It's very very impressive. Um, you know, if if his resume was like a banking logo slide, it would be a pretty good slide. But but like the point is like don't you got to tune out the noise and not just let random anonymous people online tell you or even people around you for that matter tell you what is or isn't possible.
Yeah.
In my experience a lot of the times when people tell you oh you should forget about this or oh you should give up on that, it's going to be too hard. They're not necessarily being malicious. A lot of times it's even the people who are closest to you. It could even be your parents. It could be like someone who you trust because you think they have your best interests at heart always. And I'm not saying they don't, but a lot of times when people tell you something is not possible, it's because they have a limiting belief.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean that you need to have that limiting belief. It
Yeah.
is their worldview because they personally don't know anyone around them in their life who has done what you're trying to do. And so they tell you that I don't think this is possible. I don't know anyone who has done it, which is they're not lying.
Yeah.
But also, just because they haven't met anyone like that, um, it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who have done that. Like I can show you so many students in Wall Street Mastermind with probably a similar profile to you, or maybe worse than you, who have achieved this. So then, like you can look at that and either say, "Yeah, it's too hard because this doesn't happen that often," or you could. Some people look at that and say, "Well, if this person did it, then why can't
Hmm.
I?" Right? And that's all about perspective and just how you want to view things. Are you a glass
Hmm.
half full or a glass half empty type of guy or gal? Right? But the point is, don't let other people impose their limiting beliefs on you. If you have something that you really truly care about and that you want badly, then there's almost always a way to make it happen. It just depends on how badly you want it and what you're willing to do for it, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny what you're saying about like being hard at target schools as well. Like I think people forget that sometimes. Like where we paint it as like if you go to Harvard, it's easy to get a job. Like no, it's I'm at Harvard now and I've been at BYU and it is frankly almost just as hard to get a job at Harvard as it was at BYU. The only difference is like a little bit more willingness to like open the email in the first place or something like that. And so the brand matters. I'm not going to deny that, but it really only gets that first step going, and then beyond that, it is 100% up to you.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
and
also
so,
the other to that point, the other thing you have to realize too is like a lot of times if you go to a target school, um, the way that recruiting happens is the firm will have a set
mhm,
quota for how many people they want to hire from their school.
yep,
So your real competition is not even like the entire candidate pool. Your real competition is all of your classmates who go to the same school as you, and then
mhm,
you're all fighting for like the few spots that are available. And so,
exactly.
yeah, you have more brand recognition. but so does your classmate. And the quality of the competition is probably candidly also higher. Uh,
Hmm.
and so, to Max's point, like it's not as straightforward as you think, right? It's
Hmm.
not just like, oh yeah, if I go to a target school, then it's easy peasy. Like it's all relative. You're still being graded on a curve, no matter what, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, right?
Yeah.
Um, so okay, I guess let's move on to kind of I want to start talking about kind of your professional experience because I think we've given a lot of advice on just recruiting from a non-target, from a target, et cetera, et cetera. Um,
Hmm.
so you obviously started in banking at Lazard, uh,
Hmm.
very prestigious elite boutique bank, super tough to break into. Then you moved over to Catalyst. I don't have the statistics on this, but my sense from helping a bunch of students is that Catalyst is probably even harder to get into. um, and uh, and for those of you who maybe you're not familiar with Catalyst, Catalyst is probably the best technology investment bank out there. It's led by Frank Quattrone, which is probably most people would say the greatest technology investment banker of all time, as well as his partner, George Boutros. His first name's George, right? I think it's George.
Yep.
Anyway, those two guys are kind of legendary in the investment banking space. Um, I think Frank is a billionaire, I want to say. I don't know, which is like
Yep.
very, very hard to do as an investment banker, just so you guys know. Like, it's very hard
Yeah.
to become a billionaire by being an investment banker. And if he isn't, then he's at least close. Um, so, anyway, regardless, these are two very different but equally elite firms. So, I'm curious, like having worked at firms like Lazard and Catalyst, like what were some of the biggest lessons that you took away from your time in banking and just from like working with super exceptional individuals like that or working
Mhm.
for people like that? Like what did you learn?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and frankly, yeah, that was the biggest piece about both of these banks is not the deals we were working on, not the brand name or anything like that, but the people that you were sitting around 24 hours a day learning from. And so I learned a little bit of different things from each bank, though, and most of my time at Lazard though was just the learning what banking is like and like learning what it's about. And so the first thing that you learn when you hit the desk is like you think that you've worked hard in school and you think that you've worked hard beforehand and you probably have, but you learn to work hard. Like you push your limits and you discover new frontiers of what you can do relative to what you thought you could do. And so I remember early on, I was working on what at the time was actually the largest software deal of all time. It was IBM Red Hat. It was this massive marquee deal, $34 billion. And so it was an incredible opportunity. And about like a month or two in the process, like I called up my sister and at like in the middle of the night, and she like wakes up and she's like, Max, like, why are you calling me? I'm like, I actually think I'm going to die because I'm so tired. And she was like, do you need to go see a doctor? Like, are you going to be okay? And I was just like, I don't know if I can do this.
No.
But she talked me down. She's like, okay, Max, like you're not gonna die. Like, yeah, you're sleep deprived. Just go take a caffeine pill and like keep going. Like you gotta keep working here. And so throughout that process, I think I just learned that my capacity was a lot greater than I thought it was.
Yeah.
And I know that this is not the same level, so pardon the comparison I'm about to make, but a lot of my friends who have like been in the SEALs or something like that, or have done like boot camp in the army or something, they talk about like carrying 200-pound packs and doing push-ups in the ocean and like trekking through the wilderness and sleep deprivation for days at a time. Like obviously very different experiences. I'm not trying to equate those, but to some extent, the point is the same. Where you're pushing yourself, you're doing something you didn't realize you could do, and every day after that, I wake up saying, I can work harder than I'm going to work today because I did that in the past. So that's kind of what I learned at Lazard.
Mm.
And at Catalyst, to some extent, it was cementing that. It was settling in, it was hitting a groove and like, just getting past the sheer like exhaustion and blur of it and getting into some of the technical expertise. and in the industry expertise. Where Catalyst, I think, as Sam was mentioning, is tech focused. They only do tech. They live, they eat, they breathe tech. And so half of the other analysts were coding CS majors and things like that, and they were just constantly like talking about infrastructure and cloud computing and like hyperscaling and elastic resources and things like that. And so it was a very technical, very industry specific group. And so I was able to get a deep familiarity with the tech industry while really pushing into the details of finance, SaaS economics, LTV, CAC, retention rates, gross net dollar, and just really, really getting to the bottom of that. And so that honed my skills as a banker, honed my skills as a financier. But the last thing I'll just say about my time in banking was learning to negotiate. Like it honestly, I know that you were talking about George Boutros and Frank Quattrone and whatnot, and they truly are legends in the industry. And I tell you, it's almost like this sounds a little silly. It's almost a reverent experience to get on the phone and like hear them like busting out a deal with the head of investment banking at another bank or something like that, and just seeing the way that they like approach that is
Mhm.
pretty incredible.
Man, that actually, as you were describing that, I was trying to like visualize it, and I was like, that does sound incredible. Like I would pay to be able to experience that, one time, like be a fly on the wall and kind of hear how guys like that do deals.
Yeah,
And so but honestly, it's so hard to get into these firms, but also that is why it's so hard is that if you are able to break in, you literally get to have the privilege of getting the best business education you could possibly get from
yeah,
some of the greatest deal makers of our generation, right? Uh,
mhm,
and so that is honestly, yeah, I'm jealous. I gotta say, but and I think the story at Lazard about you thinking you were gonna die, that really resonates. Honestly, I mean, that's like your welcome to banking moment, right?
yep,
I experienced that in my first week at Deutsche Bank, which I actually kind of like wrote about that on my LinkedIn recently, and my first week, I also had thoughts about quitting because I was doing like 120 hours a week, probably because I was
mhm,
slow in the beginning, but partially also because I was working with an associate that just like drove his analyst super hard. And that post got like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of impressions on LinkedIn. Like people really liked it, I guess. But it was true. Like I thought, like I threw up in the what I didn't write in the post was that I threw up in the bathroom in the office at like 6 in the morning
oh
because I
gosh,
had to drag myself back into the office after having my housewarming party the night before, and I was like, oh my god, what is happening to me? Like this is not sustainable. Like this is, I feel so, I feel so
yeah,
unhealthy. Like it was like that. I feel like I was like at my all time low basically in that moment. But
mhm,
I got through it. I'm glad I didn't quit. And to your point, I think obviously I have a lot of friends who have gone through banking, and then later potentially even like a buy side role, private equity, whatever. Um, and yeah, like I think a lot of people, they have their definition of what it means to work hard is
mhm,
just different for people who have gone through this experience versus for, I would, let's just say, like normal people who have not gone through this experience. um it's just different.
yeah,
I don't know how to describe it, but it's like that is a huge competitive advantage in the long run. Even
yep,
me, like building Wall Street Mastermind, like it was so much work. I don't think people know, like it is so much work over the last 8 years um, to run your own business, and this is probably why most people don't do it. And this is probably also why a lot of businesses, most of the businesses that get started, they fail, right?
yeah,
Because it's hard. Obviously, we haven't failed, and we've done quite well, and I'm proud of that. But like a big part of the reason why I think I was able to do that, and also a big part of the reason why I'm excited that and I'm confident that you'll be able to do a great job as well, is because I know we've both been through that initial kind of baptism by fire where
yeah,
we just had to learn how to work. I think like
Yeah,
that's like one of the most important things you learn in banking is just like learning how to work. Um,
yeah.
as cliche as that sounds. So um, you will get so many skills in banking. Yes, you'll learn how to build financial models. Yes, you'll learn how to think like an investor. Yes, you'll learn how to do PowerPoint presentations. You'll learn how to do all of those things. But if we just sum it up all into like one thing, it's like you will learn how to outwork everybody else, and
Hmm.
just be more efficient and more effective and more productive with your time. And that is the
Hmm.
ultimate advantage because we all just have 24 hours in a day. Uh,
Hmm.
you and everybody else that you're competing against, you all have 24 hours in a day. So it's what you make out of that 24 hours that sets you
Hmm.
apart, right? So
Absolutely.
um, so back to your experience though, I guess what surprised you the most then once you were actually in the seat as an analyst? Because obviously, we spend all of our college years scratching and clawing and trying to fight our way into the seat, and then
Yeah.
once you get there, was it what you expected, or were there a lot of surprises? Kind of
Mhm.
talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So at the end of the day, the thing that surprised me most actually was the culture shock. Like I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting myself into on the rest of it. Like it was hard. I knew it was going to be hard. It was doing DCFs. I knew I was going to do DCFs. It was accounting. It was it was intense. Like all that stuff. Like I got. What was funny though is there was like this almost intangible quality to banking about the way that you walk, the way that you talk, the way that you act that I really just didn't expect to be such a big part of the job. Like I
Mm,
remember during my first internship at Lazard, I was sitting there at the bullpen. We were getting dinner at like 9 p.m. Got some Chipotle, and we were sitting around the table, and some of the other analysts they were talking, and they were like, oh yeah, like it'd be so embarrassing if you showed up to work wearing like an H&M shirt or something like that, or like a cheap watch or who knows whatever they were saying exactly. And I sort of like looked down at my burrito. I'm like, I'm definitely wearing like a $20 H&M shirt right now. And so like it was kind of like a wake up call that like people in this industry like they talk a certain way, they act a certain way, and they dress a certain way. And this isn't a story saying like go and buy like a $500 dress shirt. Like please don't waste your money on that. Like wear an H&M shirt if it looks all right. But the thing that I really took away from that though is that you have to get the culture cues right. Like you can't just be totally oblivious to what people think about you and the way that they teach you and things like that. Because I think I was a little bit of an idealist, saying like if I'm good enough, if I can build a DCF well enough, people just aren't going to care the way I talk, the way I act, the way I interact with people. But realistically, this is maybe one of the hardest parts about banking for independently minded people, is like you kind of have to fit a mold a little bit.
yeah,
I'm not saying kill your personality. I'm not saying it can't come back after you spend a couple years in banking, but make sure that you're at least willing to fit the mold well enough that you don't shoot yourself in the foot in those early stages. Like, do what you got to do to look sort of like what they're expecting you to look like and talk like and act like, and then let your personality show afterward.
yeah, for sure. I mean, first impression matters a lot,
Absolutely.
not just in banking, but in life. Uh, as humans, I think we have a lot of cognitive biases, and most of us we decide whether we like a person or not probably within the first 30 seconds of us meeting them.
Hmm.
And then once someone has formed their opinion about you, uh, it is very difficult for you to then go and change your opinion later on.
Hmm.
And this is a slightly kind of different point than what you were making, but uh, going back to that story that I just told about my uh, welcome to banking moment where I wanted to quit, like the flip side of that story is the silver lining coming out of that was um, I then like because I was pulling 120 hours a week right off the bat as a first week in the office, not voluntarily, I just like got unlucky, but uh,
Hmm.
that ended up actually being really lucky because people's first impression of me became that, oh, Sam is the hardest working analyst in the class. Uh,
Mm, yeah.
and actually, for the rest of that year, I would actually, I didn't like, tally this in an Excel spreadsheet or anything, but just my gut feeling says that I actually probably worked the least out of the five first-year analysts in my class. Like, genuinely, I would like go work out at the gym across the street with the second years. Sometimes I would like go to happy hour with the second years. Second years are checked out. Okay. Like they got like exit opportunities lined up, whatever. They're checked out. They do whatever they want. I was like one of the only guys that in my class, not one of, I was the only guy in my class that would like, kind of hang out with them sometimes.
Mhm,
And so, but at the end of the year, I still ended up being the top bucket analyst. And I
mhm.
thought about it and I was like, I think a lot of that just goes back to that first week, that first impression that people had of me. And then it just like, whether that was right or wrong,
Yeah.
people just kind of stayed on that. Right. And so back to your point about looking the part, sounding the part, walking the walk, talking the talk, that stuff's important because
Mhm.
that a lot of that will affect people's first impression of you. And at the end of the day, in banking, if you want to move up, to your point earlier about why you wanted to do sales, um, it's a sales business. You're gonna have to be someone that they feel like they can put in front of clients,
Yeah.
and by clients I mean CEOs and CFOs of like some of the largest publicly traded companies in the world, or some of, even if the private companies, some of the hottest private companies in the world, and you just have to be presentable. There's like
Mhm.
no ifs or buts about it. And so, that's why that stuff matters, right? Um, so I guess, continuing along the same lines, like if you, in terms of like being successful uh, as a banker, like if you look back now, in addition to just kind of looking the part, what
Mhm.
were some of the key skills uh, or habits that helped you stand out and succeed as an analyst, in your opinion?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I loved your story. I think that that is so true about all those moments where you just really have to reckon with what you're doing and really set a good and first impression. But beyond setting a good first impression and beyond the basics, like build good models, have attention to detail, like work hard, all that stuff, I'm just gonna take for granted. There were two other things that like really just helped me succeed. The first one was actually speed, and uh, and this is super important to focus as quickly as possible in banking and finance on getting fast, because the difference between a 120-hour week and a 110-hour week is a 10% efficiency increase. And like now that doesn't sound like a huge amount. You're like, why would I care if I'm working 110 hours a week? That's a lot. No, that's like an extra hour of sleep every day. That's like getting a shower every day. That's a big difference. And I promise you that that's going to matter. And so if you can increase your efficiency by 10%, your life just went from like really crappy to like pretty crappy. And the way that I did that was just by like seriously getting smart on the IT, getting smart on the keyboard shortcuts, getting smart on the advanced systems and stuff. And so like do the classic thing where you turn off your mouse and like kick it to the side of the thing and just like be slower in the short run so you can be faster in the long run. It's a
Yeah,
discipline thing. Are you willing to take the pain now so you have the gain later? But there's other really cool techniques. Like I learned a bunch of things from the Qatalyst analysts about like how to set up folder shortcuts so that when you type in the top of your Explorer bar, it automatically takes you to the folder instead of having to like click on shortcuts and click on quick access things. And that sounds small. It is small, but it saves you like 3 seconds 50 times a day. It's a few minutes there, a few minutes here. And before you knew it, by the time I was a second year analyst, I was getting just as much work done as like, some of my classmates, but I was working half an hour less every day.
yeah.
And that really matters. But it
You,
seems like you got something to say on that one, Sam.
no, I was gonna say you're so right, and that also resonates with me because, again, going back to why I was able to go to the gym with the second years, and why I was able to go to happy hour, like I was, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I was the fastest guy in my class.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
speed matters, and a lot of things you're saying now, I'm like, oh yeah, I also did that, or oh yeah, I also did something similar. It's like you think it's trivial, but every second matters, or every second you can shave off of your whatever action you're performing matters when you're performing that action hundreds of times a day.
Yeah.
It's like the Olympic swimmer or the
Yes.
sprinter who's trying to shave off like 0.1 second from their time because that could be the difference between them winning a medal versus not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not even just every day that you're doing that. Like, you're doing that every day, you're doing it every year, and, like, I'm still doing all those same things. Like, I'm still using all those keyboard shortcuts, and so that has just amplified the rest of my career for the last, 10 years. So, invest. But the second thing, though, that really does help you succeed in the long run is just having a little bit of self care. And so, even if it meant getting a little bit less sleep, I went running almost every single day while I was in banking. Even if it was just like a 20-minute, get a couple miles around the block or something like that. Whatever that is for you, find some way to make sure that it's sustainable, because if it's not sustainable, I've seen what happens. I've had classmates who they burn out, they get a bad attitude, they piss off their staffer because they're like, they're not taking care of themselves. They let themselves go, then they feel crappy every day when they get up. It just makes it that much harder, and they break the cycle of like their mental and physical health,
Yeah.
and then they can't do a good job to begin with. And so, ironically, even if your goal is only to be a top bucket analyst, you also have to like be a little bit of a human being in order to sustain that. And the other piece of that is it's very, very easy to lose your relationships while you're in banking. Um, and I can tell you all sorts of funny stories about the people who broke up with me because I was texting during dates and stuff like that and messaging my boss back. But
We've all been there.
despite yeah, we've been there. But I was very clear about saying, like, I've got a few family members and friends that, like, no matter what, I'm gonna respond to their text when I can. I'm gonna call them back when I get 2 minutes at 10 p.m. on a Friday. Like, I'm gonna maintain those connections, and like that's important. Like, no matter how important banking is, at the end of the day, you've gotta maintain the relationships that matter too.
Yeah. No, that's really, really good advice. Because yeah, it is somewhat of a marathon, not a sprint. And so you gotta make sure that you don't burn out. And so any chance you get, I mean, you should learn to value your free time so much uh, when you're in banking. Like if and
Yeah,
when you do have free time, um, I'm always making sure that I don't know, doing something with that time that's going to fill me up or help me recharge my batteries. And that thing is different for everybody, right?
yeah,
Like for me back then, when I was in banking in the early 20s, it was like I'll admit it was like partying, So it's like on the weekend, if I didn't have to work, like I would have to go out and I have to like go have a drink or like whatever. And I'm not saying like that's the probably the healthiest habit, but at the time that was like what kept me like sane or gave me something to look forward to,
hmm,
going out with my friends. And also I think like that probably did help me at least do a better job of maintaining some of the relationships that I did have with my friends. But also, I will say, like, yeah, like maintaining relationships were hard during banking. What I learned though, also, is especially as I get older and older, like I'm almost 40 now as of the time of this recording. As you get older, like your circle just naturally uh, gets smaller. You
hmm,
become busier. You end up having a family. You have kids. You have
hmm,
all these other things that demand your time and attention, and then so you start having to be more and more selective about who you choose to give your time to,
yeah,
and naturally, like you're just not gonna be able to, for most people, have like a massive circle of just like acquaintances or whatever that you always keep in touch with because they're not important enough to make the cut. Like you only have 24 hours in a day and they're just not important enough. Right. And so
mhm,
ultimately, like at some point when you get old enough, you come to peace with the fact that I don't need quantity, I just need quality. I have um probably like a handful of people who I consider to be my lifelong friends, like we will be friends forever, no matter what happens. And with people like that, to your point, one, obviously continue to invest in those relationships, but two, what I learned about those people too, ironically,
Mhm.
I feel, is that those people understand, and
Yeah.
also they will still be there after you come out of the other side of these 2 years, where, like, let's say you disappear for 2 years and you like barely talk to them because you're just like heads down working or whatever. um,
Yeah.
they're still gonna be there for you. It's like that Dr. Seuss book, like those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind. Um, it's kind of like that, and some of my best friends, like, now we live in different parts of the world. We don't get to talk every day. We might just text occasionally. We have like our own guy group chat and whatever. But then, like, every time we meet up, it's like we were never it's not like this awkward thing where, like, oh my god, like now we're strangers or whatever. It just feels like we never left. And I think
Yeah.
that is the beauty of it. And so, anyway, I think it's a really good point, but it's tough because I think sometimes people are like, oh, I'm not willing to do this, I'm not willing to work that hard, I'm not willing to, like, sacrifice my work life balance and this and that. And I get it, right? Like, yes, like there are sacrifices involved. um Everything in life comes with trade-offs. uh you can't have it all. You can't be like, I want to be super rich and super successful and have the best exit opportunities and yada yada yada, and then, like, I also want to only work like 30 hours a week. Like, like,
Yeah.
that Venn diagram does not intersect. So you gotta choose, what you want out of your life, what you want to optimize for. I'm not saying like,
Yeah.
hey, what I chose or what Max chose is the right way or the only way or whatever. It's just like that's what we chose. That's what was important to us. To me, the sacrifices that I had to make for those 2 years was 1,000% worth it. If I could
Mhm.
go back to college and start over and do it 10 times, I would still do the exact same thing I
Mhm.
did 10 times out of 10. And I could not possibly have the lifestyle that I have today. I genuinely believe this. I could not have the lifestyle I have today if I did not start my career in banking and did not have all the opportunities that came out of banking. After that, I would not be able to provide the things that I'm able to provide for my family, a lot of which I didn't even have growing up.
Mhm.
If I, didn't have the career trajectory that I had, right? And so that's also why I'm super passionate about, you know, what we do here at Wall Street Mastermind. That's why I've been so passionate about building this business, because I understand from personal experience
Yeah.
the type of impact we can have um, when we help a student that, couldn't have had these opportunities. Suddenly now they have these opportunities. And I don't want to be hyperbolic about it, but like it is truly life changing in my experience.
Yeah.
So,
No,
um,
yeah, I don't think that's hyperbolic at all. Like, as much as I would hate to have to go back and be an analyst again in so many ways, I'm also just extremely grateful because, like, yeah, it truly is kind of the American dream incarnate. Like, I didn't think that that exists. There's so much like social commentary about like the impossibility of mobility and stuff like that. But like, you saw it, I saw it, and it was hard, and we did it. And like, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much, but like, I think that's what drives me as a coach is like for the kids who really want this and like who really want to like improve their lives and like change their status in the world and get the tools that they need to do whatever it is they want to do with their lives. Like,
so,
the fact that banking can provide that is really, really incredible.
because it's like it is hard, right? I'm not sitting here telling you guys that, oh, this is easy. It's not supposed to be easy.
Mhm.
If it was easy, everyone would have it already, and it wouldn't be special. But also, like, life is hard either way. You just
Yeah.
get to choose what kind of hard you want to have. Do you want it to be
Mm.
harder the first 2 years of your career when you're still young? You still have the stamina. You don't have a wife or a husband. You don't have kids. You don't have all these other obligations. That is like the hardest you're ever going to be able to work, is when you
Mhm.
are first just graduating. And by the way, that is also when you have the least to offer, because you have no experience, you have no skills or very little skills. And so the one of the few things you can offer is your work ethic, right?
Mhm.
And so you can choose to have it hard first and have delayed gratification, or you could choose to have it hard later because you
Yeah.
weren't willing to make those sacrifices early on. You just want to work like a, you know, let's say like normal paying 9 to 5 job. By the way, like, okay, nothing wrong with 9 to 5 jobs, but like the average college grad today is making $65,000 when they graduate. That is not enough, especially if you want to live in a, metropolitan city like a New York, like a San Francisco, like like these coastal cities where there's more jobs and more opportunities. Like you're going to be paycheck to paycheck, right? And then so what's harder? Having to work longer hours for 2 years to set you up for the rest of your career for the next several decades, or is it harder to have to live paycheck to paycheck for the rest of your life, or not be able to afford things, or have to pick and choose, what you can get your kids for Christmas, or if you can send them to the best schools because it's a private school, or like what kind of hard do you want? Like that
Yeah.
that's a choice, right? I'm not trying to be like overly dramatic about it, but like that's just like what you get to choose what type of heart you want to have. But either way, it's hard now or it's hard later. It's hard for a brief period of time or it's hard for a long time, right?
Mhm.
I watched the Diaries of a CEO. The other analogy, which I think you'll appreciate, because I think you run marathons and stuff, right, Max? So um, the founder, I think, or maybe the first CEO of Netflix, not Reed Hastings, but the guy before him.
Mhm.
He was on Diaries of a CEO, and which is a famous podcast where Stephen Bartlett interviews a ton of really famous people and successful people. And he was
Mhm.
asking, like, do you believe in hard work, or like how important is it to work hard, or like does hard work guarantee success, or it was like something along those lines.
Yeah.
And basically, this Netflix guy said the analogy he gave was like, when you run a marathon, like I guess I've never run a marathon, but I think like there's a portion where you're supposed to swim or something, right? Or sorry, that's triathlon. I'm in triathlon.
That's
So,
yeah.
there's like a swimming portion where everyone is
Mhm.
like running into the water, and then
Mhm.
in those first, like, I don't know, 40 or 100 yards or whatever, when you're in the water, when everyone's first jumping in, people are like punching you, kicking you, like in the water, and everyone's just fighting to like get out ahead of everyone else. But if you can
Mhm.
like get out ahead of everyone else and you're out in the open water, then the rest of the way becomes so much easier. Versus if you're
Mhm.
just like stuck back there in like this crowded water where everyone's like, trying to like beat the shit out of each other, right? And like that is like literally the analogy. His point was that like early on in your career, you do need to fight as hard as you can to get out into the open water. And then like once you do, then everything becomes easier, right? And I
Yeah.
was like watching, I was like, man, that makes so much sense. Like it aligns with my own experience, you know?
That's
So,
funny. That's funny. And very, very Machiavellian, a little bit dark. So, just to be clear, we're not advocating punching anyone in your path to banking, but I
totally.
get the point. I think that's possibly very, very true. That does get like a lot easier once you've had that sort of different trajectory. Because it's sort of like, it's like you're on a train track and it diverges by 1 degree a year for the next 50 years, and then they end up in extraordinarily different places.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
also it's also like, look, it's only getting harder, right? When you read
yeah.
in the news all the time, there's all these AI tools, companies are laying people off, they're hiring less junior folks because like the AI can do a lot of the easier junior level stuff. And so it's only going to get more competitive. But like, again, if you can just really make sure you kick that door down in the beginning and get in, then
Hmm.
you really get to separate yourself from the rest of the pack, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know what's going to happen to like the world economy or whatever, but like we all know we've been living in a high inflation environment. Government keeps printing money. I don't know if that's ever going to change. Politicians, they
Hmm.
just want to spend, spend, spend because they want to be reelected. Um,
Hmm.
and they also, can't tax their constituents because that's unpopular. So we're between a rock and a hard place, but that's why you have inflation all over the world, right? Because they just
Yeah.
keep making more money. And honestly, like when there's inflation, um, the people who are like rich and wealthy, they're not affected because
Mm,
their
mhm.
income and their wealth, and they invest in assets that actually go up as
Yeah,
inflation goes up. They have real estate, they have all these things that are like inflation hedges that normal people can't necessarily afford, right?
mm,
Like the average year over year, cost of living adjustment or whatever is like 4 or 5%. A lot of times that doesn't even keep up with inflation. Versus like if you are starting your career in investment banking, it's like over 20% per
mhm.
year. Like if you look at the compensation survey data, right? And so that's
Yeah,
like that actually is ahead of inflation, which is why you don't feel the impact of inflation. Like
yeah,
your real wages in real terms are actually right. Inflation adjusted is actually rising, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
that's the other thing why I think this stuff is so important. Not to
Mhm,
like overly belabor the point, but I just think
mhm.
this stuff like this is message that I want. This is some of the message I want to get out there because this is not stuff that most college students even think about, but it
For
has
sure.
so much um, it has such a big ramifications, like long-term impact on the rest of your life, not just your life but
Exactly.
your future family's life.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
like I can't really think of too many things that matter more than this.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
anyway, I'll get off my I'll stop lecturing. um, but,
Good
but
lecture, lecture.
let's go back to you because this is really more about you. But um, we talked about the banking years. Um, then you went into private equity, which obviously is a very uh, standard path that most people want to pursue after banking. I would say private equity is like the most popular exit opportunity. Doesn't mean
Mhm,
everyone can
mhm.
get in. In fact, I would say most people who try to break into private equity aren't successful because it's even harder and even more selective than getting into banking. In fact, your
Yeah,
competition is way better because you're only competing against the people that already got into banking, right? So there are no scrubs this time around
yeah.
versus when you were recruiting for banking, a lot of people may not even be qualified, right?
Mm.
But you get into Vector Capital. Um, what made you want to choose private equity in the first place? And then also, again, like what kind of work did you have to do to get in?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, so you're absolutely right that the bar has been raised, and the only thing that's good about that, though, is that if you've kept up in banking, you've also raised too, and so like you're getting competent just as the increases in expectation are occurring. And so why I chose it though, like honestly, as much as you've painted me as an intentional person, honestly, a lot of it was just pure pressure. Like everyone's doing recruiting, and I'm just like, okay, like that seems cool. That seems like a good thing. And I did have a broader sense that like I wanted to get an MBA eventually, and I knew that most of the time to get to the MBA schools, like you gotta go do PE. And so there was like a little bit of a gap in between where I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. It sounds like I'll pay money. It sounds like I'll work less. What was funny about transitioning though to bank or to PE during like a very busy deal environment is I think I worked just as much. And then the other funny thing about leaving Catalyst is you always make less money when you leave Catalyst, no matter what you're doing. Um, and so for me, in terms of how to like get there, it was just being smart about the networking more so than banking because unlike banks where there are probably 50 really top quality good banks that you probably want to be an analyst at, there are hundreds of PE firms. Like there's a lot less consolidation in that industry, and so it's much more necessary to actually get out there and do your research on what the firms are like. And if you don't have that research done prior to even those first conversations with the headhunters, you're just not going to be able to credibly present yourself. They're going to say, "Oh, like what are you interested in?" If you don't know the exact industry, the exact investing style, the exact geography, the exact value versus growth oriented, like what are you going to say to them when they ask you what you want to do? And what
No,
are you going to say when they say, "Hey, have you heard about this other client that we're representing?" And you're like, "No, I've literally never seen that name before." It's just not a good look.
no.
And so ultimately, the networking became a lot more important for my PE recruiting journey than it was for banking.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. And so I think like with PE, to your point, it was similar for me. Like, I don't think I even actually knew what PE was when I first got into banking. I was just happy to be there. I was like, oh my God, I finally got into banking. This is like what I've been looking for like the last 3 years, like basically from sophomore year to senior year.
Yeah.
The entirety of those 3 years of college for me was like had a singular focus of just trying to make it into banking. And then I got there, and it felt like as soon as I got there, people started talking about like, oh, gotta start recruiting for PE, and I was like, oh, what's PE? Like,
Mhm.
and so like, I don't know, like I felt like the other analysts in my class, I guess they knew people that were in PE or they had siblings that were in PE, and so they were like more
Yeah.
informed. I had no one in my circles that had even done PE, and so I didn't know what PE was, and um, I was just thoroughly unprepared. The first time around when I went to PE recruiting, I thought it was just going to be. I very naively thought it was just going to be more of the same. I was like, well, I got into banking, so it's probably the same process, right? And it was like
Mhm.
so much harder. And I was like, I don't know how to answer any of these questions. They're like giving me modeling tests. Like I don't know how to build an LBO model from scratch. It's like I flunked that completely. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that was like back in 2008. I think fast forward to now, the students today are a lot more informed, a lot more
Mhm.
sophisticated. There's so much more in terms of like just information and resources out there, um, YouTube videos, Chat GPT. Like, man, these are things that we didn't have back then. That I wish wish we had, but as a result of that, the competition has also gotten harder, like you said. And that's not just with banking, that's just not with PE. Probably same thing for getting into GSB. Probably same thing for getting into Harvard. Like every single uh, desirable or sought after thing that's out there is
Mhm.
just getting more competitive. Um,
Yeah.
Investment banking applicant pools are getting larger every year. JP
Mhm.
Morgan's applicant pool increased by like 27% last year, uh,
Wow.
in just 1 year. And then their internship class, the size of the internship class stayed flat, or maybe increased by like 2% or something, right? Like
Mhm.
not proportional, right? And so like that's why the acceptance rate just keeps plummeting. Like I
Mhm.
think Goldman Sachs back in 2014 had like a 5% acceptance rate, which today would be like, oh my god, that is amazing, 5%. Now it's like 0.7%. Same
Yeah.
firm, 0.7. Their class size has stayed the same in the last 12 plus years or whatever, but it's just the number of applicants have increased by like 7 or 8x
Mhm.
just during that time because people are becoming more informed and now they know about these jobs and whatnot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's actually a concept they talked a lot about at Stanford. It's called like the star effect, where these positional goods, where the value is from their relative status, like the difference between Stanford and a school that's not Stanford. It's like it's this very focus on everyone on this one resource, and the number of slots is staying the same, and the number of people that want it is getting bigger. Is like we have more globalization, more mass media, more social media coverage, and so it's really just not looking good. If you care about those positional goods in terms of competition, it's just scarcity is amplifying the demand.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So talk a little bit about your experience at Vector once you got there. Um, Obviously, I don't think, I don't know, I've never worked there, but my understanding is like, Vector is like a tough place to work. It's uh, like if you want to be like promoted there and get a return offer to come back after business school, whatnot. Like I would say more people fail to do that than do that successfully. I think
Mhm.
you were one of the few people, uh, one of the few associates during your time there who they actually did want to bring back, and so that's quite the accomplishment, I would say. What do you think it is that? First of all, what did you do there? And then second of all, like what do you think? What do you think it is that made you successful there, and like kind of what set you apart from just your classmates and stuff?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so like you're saying, it's always a pyramid once you get into these industries, and so it doesn't stop getting harder. The bar continues to go up the farther you make it in here. And so, the basic gist of what I was doing though is the same as any PE firm. And so, you source deals, you execute deals, you work on portfolio once you've done the deal, and then the fourth bucket that a lot of people don't talk as much about is like you help build the firm. And so I can get into more of what that is, but like the hiring, the helping fundraise, and all that sort of stuff. But for me, ultimately, I think the area where I spiked the most was on the sourcing. And this goes back, like we're tying on themes that we talked about earlier, like with sales, where in college I knew that it was going to be important to source deals eventually, and so I did that sales job at Lucid Software, and that helped me to be able to reach out to people cold and to do cold calls and cold emails and get comfortable with that. And so when I showed up at Vector, I knew I wanted to source. And this is not one of those sourcing heavy PE shops like, a Summit or a TA or something like that. Like Vector very much is an analytical, very, very technical, sort of value oriented, tech focused PE fund that doesn't do sourcing super much. It's like you have a thesis and then you go execute. You're not just spraying and putting emails out there. But I wanted to do it, and so I showed up and I found a VP who was willing to let me like send emails from his account, believe it or not. And we got a thesis going around space tech, reached out to hundreds of firms, and we ultimately ended up getting a deal done in my first or second year that was ultimately a 9-figure exit for our fund in less than a year, which was a big deal for our fund at the time. Was about 1.5 billion or something like that. And so it was a really, really incredible deal that I think impressed people, that like an associate was able to help lead that, and help create that process. And the best part about it though is ultimately I held on to some of the stock from that deal, and it's been paying for business flow ever since.
That's amazing. And like honestly, that is not um that's like not normal, right? Like I don't think any other associates sourced a deal like that during your time there. And I think, I mean, unless you work at a sourcing shop, which is, I don't think Vector is technically that. Like unless you work at like a Summit or what else, like TA, I think maybe it was a
Mhm,
sourcing shop too, where associates are actually expected to source. But this sounded more like you were going above and beyond what
mhm,
was actually expected of you, and just kind of taking on more responsibilities. And I think also going back to what you said earlier about like working at Lucid and wanting to learn sales skills, I'm sure a lot of what you learned at Lucid probably also helped you with this as well. Even though it may not have been deliberately planned that way, but like it's always, it never hurts to just acquire more skills. The more skills you can
mhm,
acquire, the more valuable you become. Um,
mhm.
but but I think like you sourcing this deal that made the firm a ton of money. I mean, 9-figure exit in less than 1 year. I don't know what the IRR was on that, but
Ridiculous. Don't even bother calculating
not
it.
meaningful.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, exactly.
but you know, funny story. Like as part of this process of uh, me deciding to kind of hand the baton to Max for Wall Street Mastermind and have him take over the business, obviously, needless to say, this is the most important hire I have ever made, right? And so, uh, I was trying to leave no stones unturned in terms of understanding um, what Max has done in the past, how has he been at every single place that he's worked at, and not just like how has he performed, but how has he performed relative to his peer group, um, because I need to have an A player uh, for someone who's going to be sitting in the seat, right? We have the best program on the market, and it's only going to stay that way if the person taking over as the head coach is also an A player, and honestly, hopefully, like even better than I am, which I can pretty confidently say that I think Max is that, and so I'm very excited about that. But the story I want to say is, um, as part of the interview process, then like I asked Max for reference checks, and I wanted to talk to his former bosses and kind of hear in their own words what they think about him, just in case Max was like completely lying to me during the interviews and telling me how awesome he was, right? Um, and part of what, and so I did talk to some of his bosses, and also, Max shared like his business school recommendation letter to me, which was written by, was that the managing partner at Vector, or I don't know, it was like managing director or partner,
Yeah.
um, someone really senior at the firm, basically. And I haven't told you this yet, Max, but I read that letter and I was like, because I also applied to business school when I was at GI, when I did PE. During my first year, when I was at GI, I was like, oh, if I want to stay in PE, I'm gonna have to do 2 years of business school. So I gotta start
Hmm.
applying as a first year. And I was like asking my bosses at GI for letters of recommendation because that's part of the application process.
Hmm.
I don't remember what my bosses wrote anymore. Um, but obviously I've seen those letters. But I just remember reading your recommendation letter and thinking like, dude, like, first of all, by the way, I probably applied to all the same schools that you applied to, right? Like I applied to GSB, I applied to HBS, I applied to like, probably three or four other schools, like all the top MBA programs basically. Um,
Hmm.
I didn't get in. I think I got waitlisted for two of them. I don't think I even got interviews for some of them. It's just straight up rejected, like not even worth an interview. Um,
Hmm.
I didn't have like a bad profile. Like I worked in banking, I worked in PE. I think my GMAT score was like low 700s, which is like nothing spectacular, at least for these types of schools. But it wasn't like terrible. Um, but like I think when I saw your recommendation letter, I was like, I get it now. Like, this is the type of recommendation you need to actually get into a GSP. And the
Hmm.
recommendation letter you had from your boss in PE versus the recommendation letter I had from my boss in PE was not the same. It was like not the same. It was like, I was like, yeah, I could see why, like, I can't compete with this because I didn't do anything during my time at GI that was like, super unique or extraordinary or I just did what like a normal associate was supposed to do, right?
Hmm.
And so anyway, I think like that letter was like uh maybe seemingly not a big deal, but I was like it was actually kind of eye-opening for me. And then uh
Hmm.
obviously when I talked to your other bosses, including another guy at Vector, I was the guy that you sourced the deal with,
Hmm.
your boss at Lucid. Um, Actually, your boss at Lucid said that he's been at Lucid for a very long time, what, like 8, 9, 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
Um, he's also worked at some other, really big, successful companies. He worked at Google, I think. I forgot
Hmm.
where else he worked. Um, but he said, yeah, like out of everyone that I've ever worked with, um, Max is in the top 1%. Um, and he said he called you a 10xer. I think like two or three times. He,
That's
he
funny.
kept repeating that word, and so anyway, he's a good reference for you. So if you ever need another reference, just FYI.
Good to know. Good to
um,
know.
but anyway, my point is like um, you. This is why it's important to try and go above and beyond uh, in everything you do,
Hmm.
because I think how you do one thing is how you do everything. And when you leave that type of mark along the way at all the various stops that you've been at, and when the people that you've worked with think highly of you, um, like that stuff just it's super valuable, and it
Hmm.
compounds and it helps you get the next opportunity, um, and it just kind of snowballs from there, right?
Hmm.
And so you can cut corners if you want, and whatever. Which maybe I did. Like, I have worked harder in PE. I probably could have. We GI ran out of dry powder during my second year there, so we had no money to even look at new investments. Um, our partners probably thought fundraising wasn't going to take as long as it did, so they mismanaged that a little bit. But that's not
Hmm.
an excuse. But I was like mostly doing portfolio management work, um, which meant that I could just, it was basically like a 9 to 5 job, which is like not normal for PE. And I just like, so I just did the 9 to 5,
Yeah.
So I could I have done more? Yeah, I probably could have, but not everyone is wired that way, and it seems like you were.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what makes you unique. And I think like there's a lot of uh, qualities there um, that our students can learn from you, in terms of just like how to be successful and how to um, become someone that makes other people say like, yeah, this guy's in the top 1% out of all the people I've ever worked with throughout my entire career. Like that is hard to do, you know. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, I think I'm embarrassing you a little bit, so I'll stop. But um,
No. Well, what's not coming through is the element of luck that comes from all this. Is like, yeah, I worked hard, I tried, but I also got lucky that I had bosses who cared. Like the guy at Lucid, he was incredible. Like he was just someone who cared about the people that he worked with, and he was willing to like invest in someone so they can shine. And like the guy who wrote my letter of recommendation, like he was a managing director who didn't just show up and just like treat associates as expendable resources. Like he took the time to sit down with me and say like, Max, like I want you to get into Stanford. And so Sam, I think you're probably underselling yourself here. Like no matter how hard you work, if you don't have people like that on your court, like it's hard to succeed. And so there is an element of luck there. And I think that the place you have to be smart is finding places where you can have the people around you who succeed. And that's part of why this is so important. Where you choose to go is making sure that you have a team on your side that's willing to help you get to that next level.
yeah, yeah. I mean, thank you for trying to make me look better than I am. But I would say like a lot of times like how yes, like some people are just gonna be more generous about that kind of stuff and be more likely to more willing to help. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of times like how much people are willing to help you also comes down to like how much you've helped them, you know,
Fair.
and and so like you have to earn that, right?
Yeah.
I think like as humans, psychologically, there's that book like How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like one of the things
Hmm.
that influence people is like this idea of reciprocity, right? Like we feel like we have to reciprocate if someone has done something nice for us, right?
Hmm.
Or this kid worked so hard for me and he went above and beyond and he did all these things that he didn't have to do, and because of that our firm made 9 figures in less than 1 year or whatever. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to bat for him, like, he deserves it, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, uh okay, we talked about kind of your private equity experience. um One more thing on that though before we move on, which is like how different was life on the buy side compared to investment banking? Like what did you enjoy
Hmm.
more about investing, and what did you find most challenging?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so it's a little bit of a tricky question because when you're switching from banking to PE, not only are you changing industries, but you're also changing roles. And so I was going from analyst to associate, and I was going from buy side to sell side, or sell side to buy side, and so there was a little bit of both. But the biggest things that were different was just that like there were just higher expectations across the board at every level in terms of what you had to do. And so there were a couple of challenges from that. Like the biggest one probably was just that nobody's holding your hand anymore. Like in banking, the associate sort of seems like they have control over your work, and like they're usually breathing down your neck, come behind your watching you work, watching you build Excel models. But I was building complex fund payout models with like crazy cap tables and dividend payouts, and like nobody really knew how it worked in detail. Like I just showed up and they said, "Here's this model. Like build it. We need to do a dividend recap." And I just kind of had to figure it out. And sure, they could tell when it was wrong. Like the CFO and the managing director, like they knew if it was wrong, but they weren't like able to just sit down and say, "Max, make this cell multiply by this thing and like have this pro rata formula." And so, like, you just really have to take on another level of autonomy, another level of attention to detail, and another level of like, this is my problem. Like the buck stops with me, because you
Yeah,
can't show up to your managing director and like say, okay, this is a totally messed up model. Like you just kind of have to figure it out.
yeah,
Although frankly, I probably did that a couple times, but you don't get many chances. But The thing that I would say I found I most enjoyed, though, on the other side of things, the biggest surprise in terms of enjoyment was getting to work with managing. Like, I really loved mentoring the junior associates and the analysts that I worked with, and one of the other things I worked on at Vector was starting an internship program and like helping co-lead that. And that was a really fun experience to mentor and to sort of pay forward some of those incredible bosses that I mentioned, some of those incredible people I'd worked with who'd helped me so much and helped guide me so much, that I was able to do that for them as well.
Mm, for sure. Makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I was just talking about that. I kind of think about, I don't know, an analogy came to my mind, which is just like, because we keep talking about how like things just keep getting harder as you progress further along, and then like the bar just keeps getting raised. And the analogy that comes to mind is like life is kind of like a video game, you know?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
beat the
yeah,
current level, and then you beat the boss, or maybe you die a bunch of times before you figure out how to beat the boss, and you get good enough to beat the boss, and then you go to the
exactly.
next level, and now there's a harder boss, and now you got to beat that boss, and then like you just keep repeating the process over and over again. But the good news is like most of the time, even if you fail or you
Mhm.
die, you have unlimited lives, and you can just keep coming back, right?
Yep.
You just have to keep going. You can't give up. So anyway, I don't know why that popped into my head, but I thought that was interesting. Um, let's go to your kind of graduate school experience, because obviously then after Vector, you got into this dual degree with the joint MBA at Stanford as well as an MPA at Harvard. Um, that's a pretty rare combination. I think most people know what an MBA is. Not everyone might know
Hmm.
what an MPA is, but maybe you can explain that a little bit. But also, like, what inspired you to do a
Hmm.
dual degree as opposed to just like the standard MBA, which is what most PE associates do. I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's a little funny whenever I say MPA, people are like, "What's an MPA? Do you say MPH like public health?" And so I'm like, "No, no, no, no." So an MBA is business administration, and a PA is public administration. And so the way I saw this was like, there's two ways to change the world. One is through like private means, like private sector, and the other is through the public sector. And business school and frankly private equity, the name is right there in the name. It's like it helps you at the private sector, doesn't help you at the public sector. And so my overall goal in life is to make as big of a positive impact on the world as I can. And I thought it would be pretty dang stupid of me if I only focused on half of a toolbox and only focused on the private sector.
Mm,
And so, in the same way that I was like wanting to learn sales while I was an undergrad, so I could be like an all sector athlete, I also wanted to learn a little bit about how regulation works and learn how like politics and government works a little bit as well. And so, and I've honestly, I saw how useful this would even be in the private sector. And so, for
mm,
example, early on in my time at Vector, we bought a company called McGraw Hill. Like probably a lot of you recognize the name because it's like the textbook publisher.
yeah.
And yeah, and immediately after we did the deal, like pretty close thereafter, this was the height of COVID around that time, and the government passed like huge $1 trillion stimulus packages that had billions and billions of dollars for education.
Mm,
And so overnight, our EBITDA like doubled just kind of unexpectedly. And all of us were sitting around saying, wow, there was a real regulatory risk there. And it turned out super well, but that could have gone the exact opposite direction. And so
mm,
it's to some extent like I wanted to get smarter on that. And like I wanted to catch up with my team that sort of knew how to assess that and knew how to think about those risks. And that's just been very fulfilling to learn about everything from, the Supreme Court and how that works to how to manage a nonprofit to international relationships with China and things like that.
gotcha. That makes sense. And so, what are some of the most important lessons then that you've learned from your peers at Stanford and at Harvard so far? Because I imagine you probably get to interact on a daily basis with some pretty impressive people.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and that's been probably the biggest joy is again just the people that you're around. Some really, really incredible folks, and the biggest thing I learned was just broadening my conception of what's possible.
Mm,
Like every day I would show up to class and I would sit next to like an NFL quarterback who was also like beating me in my econ class. And I would sit next to like a supermodel who was like outpacing me in a negotiation. And then I would talk with
That's
like a
gotta be
professional
distracting
musician.
for class. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like everywhere you turn, there's people who are distracting you from everything because everything you thought you were good at, there's someone who's better than you.
Wow.
And so and then there's like founders of these incredible startups, and I'm talking to them, and I'm like, dude, you're like 25. When did you have the time to build a multi-million dollar startup?
Mm.
And so it just kind of challenged my conception. Like I'd seen a mold of finance, investment banking, private equity, MBA, but I just got a little more creative and a little bit more ambitious at business school. I saw that it is possible to do unique things, to break that mold and to be a little bit more interesting, a little bit more successful than I thought was possible. And so that's part of why I'm so freaking excited about Wall Street Mastermind is this is a chance for me to break out of the mold a little bit and do something that could be really potentially very, very amazing in the world and really, really help a lot of students break into this industry. And so
Yeah.
I'm excited about taking that inspiration and helping build Wall Street Mastermind to the next level.
I guess that's a good segue then. Let's talk about Wall Street Mastermind a little bit because, as we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, you are. This is the final episode that I'm ever going to record for this podcast, by the way, because going forward, you will be taking that over amongst many other responsibilities. But,
Hmm.
um, when I think about your career trajectory, you're on like the very standard, almost like the ideal path that a lot of our uh, students would draw out in their head. Like I want to graduate, work at a top investment bank for 2 or 3 years. Then I want to go
Hmm.
into a private equity firm. Then we do that for 2 years. Then I want to get into Stanford or Harvard. Then I'm going to do that for 2 years. And I'm going to go back into private equity and I'm going to be like on this partner track or whatever. Right. That is like the ideal dream path for, I would say, a very large number of people out there. In some ways, I think that was also the path that you were on
For sure.
before we started talking about this opportunity. In fact, you were kind of in the midst of recruiting for private equity to go back as a vice president before you decided to take this job instead. What made you want to go off the beaten path? Because obviously you were doing well in private equity before business school, and I'm sure if you went back to private equity, I'm sure you would have continued to do well. And obviously that is a very lucrative career that most people would, you know would do anything to be able to be in that position. And so I think like you kind of, and to your point earlier, like probably I think a lot of your friends told you uh, you're crazy for like leaving that and then going down this path and
Yeah.
taking over this. They probably think you're just like taking over like a tutoring business or something.
Yeah.
Like I get those reactions where it's like, oh, so are you like a tutor? Or I'm like, no, but like, what made you want to do that? And also, it's like, um, like I think like the more prestigious thing to do maybe is to stay in private equity. Like if
Mhm.
you are like, oh, you have all these like super prestigious firms on your resume, Lazard, Qatalyst, Stanford, Harvard. Like, why not just continue and just like keep chasing the prestige or whatever? It's like, talk about that a little bit. Why are you
Yeah.
stepping into this role? What drew you to this opportunity? I guess.
Yeah, yeah. No, it certainly was definitely breaking the mold a little bit for almost the first time in some ways. Like, did the 2 years in banking, did a few years in PE, did the business school, like you mentioned. But ultimately, like I was talking about at Stanford, seeing my classmates have such diverse and impressive careers really opened my conception of what I could do with mine. And in particular, one of the professors that we had there, he was the founder of Alpine Partners. It's like a pretty successful PE fund, really cool shop. And he, in class, he would always tell us that you've got to follow where your energy is. And that kind of clicked for me because when I looked back over my career, like, yes, I loved finance. I love building models. I love PowerPoint, all that good stuff. Like, it sounds nerdy, but I do. But the thing that really drew my energy was coaching. And so, like, when, as soon as I got a banking internship, I was helping underclassmen get banking internships. As soon as I got full time, I was setting up recruiting trips back to BYU to pull candidates to Lazard and Qatalyst. And then in PE, I was founding an internship program so I could mentor and so I could coach and continuing to recruit. And then in business school, even, like, I started doing this full time. I started doing it professionally, and so I could pay for school. And it was just very, very clear to me that, like, wow, that's where my energy actually is in helping people develop and in helping people become as excellent as they can in finance.
Mm,
And so the opportunity to do that full time for me is a no brainer. And so, yeah, they may think I'm crazy, but, and maybe I am crazy, but I'm crazy with intentionality here. Like, I've got a goal, I've got an idea of what I love to do, and I'm excited to do that. Excited to build a skill set, excited to build a business that's centered around this.
yeah. I think like not everyone is capable of making the decision to go off the beaten path and to break that mold. And so I think, uh, but again, that's also probably part of what makes you special. And I will say, having done this for 8 years, uh, I think that being an entrepreneur and running your own business and building your own thing, I can't, I don't personally, it's hard for me to think of like a more rewarding thing than that, just speaking from personal experience, from like a professional standpoint anyway. um,
Yeah.
Obviously it's very hard, but that's also what makes it rewarding, especially when you succeed. So um, in terms of, obviously we've talked a lot about this in terms of like both you and I experiencing firsthand um, the types of doors and opportunities that having starting your career in banking can provide. So, like, what excites you the most about helping students start that journey themselves? Because that's ultimately what
Mm-hmm.
this business is about, right?
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I think that this is a theme that we touched on early on, and that, like, I really believe is true, is that fundamentally this is the chance to have a better life, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's living on a boat in the Mediterranean, or being able to donate tons of money to help kids who are in poverty around the world, like, whatever it looks like for you, working in banking, working in PE, working in finance really gets that.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in my own life. Like, when I was applying for undergraduates, I was actually enrolled at a fancy, expensive, Ivy League university. The tuition check came. I took it to my parents. I was like, "Hey, who's going to pay for this? This is a pretty big check." And they said, "Oh, have you heard of student loans?" And in that moment, I dropped out and I enrolled at BYU because I had a scholarship. And like, obviously, I'm very lucky and blessed to have even had that scholarship to fall back on, but I want to help my kids and help other people who don't have that sort of resource to be able to earn that, and
Yeah.
to be able to make it to the point where my kids don't have to choose what university to go to based off of the cost.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what that is what it's all about. Like, we're all doing this to give ourselves a better life, give our own family, our own kids a better life than even what we had. And I think I mentioned that earlier myself as well. And so
Mhm,
I think that is the driving force for a lot of us behind what we do. Um,
mhm,
what's one thing that you wish you knew, or you wish someone had told you
mhm.
before you started your own recruiting process? And also, how do you plan on making sure that every student in our program knows it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is tying back to a few themes that we talked about. We talked about how explosive the growth and interest is. We talked about how many banks there are out there and how many P firms there are out there. And really, the thing that comes to mind for me is that you really need to differentiate yourself. You need to have a relationship, because that's how you differentiate yourself, is you have a relationship with the person that you're trying to connect with. And that comes from networking. And it's funny because people who know me and the students I work with, they make fun of me. They're like, "Oh, Max, I bet your solution to this is networking, huh?" And they're like, "Oh, I've got this problem." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's probably networking, isn't it?" And yeah, they're right, because networking, it helps you learn about the jobs you want. It helps you build relationships. It helps you understand the questions to ask. It helps you give you a template of, like, what these firms are. And yes, it builds a relationship so that when you get 3,000 resumes for a single investment banking position, someone pulls yours up to the top of the stack. And some people would call that, corruption or nepotism or something like that. I call that meritocracy, because
Mm,
the people who get up to the top of the stack are the ones who thought hard enough ahead of the time to actually do the networking.
yeah.
Or sometimes there is nepotism involved, but largely speaking, I like to believe we're in a world where it's the meritocracy in there. And so that's something I really want to bring to the academy, and that we're doing here, and to our students, is to really make sure that the Wall Street Mastermind cohorts all walk out of here with an incredible, impeccable networking skill set.
Yeah. And on that point, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think there is a level of meritocracy. Look, I'm not saying there's no nepotism in the world, but guess what? That always has been, and you're not going to be able to change that. Um, so I always tell all of our students, control what's in your control, and then don't even waste your time thinking about the things that are not in your control. But networking is one of those things that you can get good at. Is one of those skills that you can develop. No one no one was born knowing already like how to network effectively. It's just not that's
Yeah.
not a skill that people have, and so it's only becoming even more important these days because I can tell you from working with so many students that networking is getting harder. I think there's a
Hmm.
recurring theme here, but everything's getting hard. But networking is getting harder because, to my point
Yeah.
earlier, there's so many more applicants now. JP Morgan alone up 27% year over year in terms of number of applicants, from 493,000 for summer 2024 internships to 630,000 applicants for summer 2025 internships. So there's more people reaching out to these bankers, more people sending these emails. The number of bankers receiving these emails have not changed. That pool is still fixed. And then there's also all these tools now, AI tools, emailing tools, mail merge tools, this and that. So not only have the number of people sending emails increased, the number of emails being sent per person has also increased. And so there's just a lot of noise out there, and it's like a lot harder to get noticed, and people are getting drowned out. And everybody's saying, "Oh my god, like my response rate is so low, it's going down. What's happening?" Is like what's happening is that's what's going on in the macro environment, which again you cannot control. So you really, really have to learn how to network effectively now more than ever if
Yep.
you want to stand. And there's no other way around it until someone figures it out. There's no other way around it. Like it's about building relationships, you know.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a. I'm very excited to. Obviously, we have like a very extensive networking curriculum in the program already.
Hmm.
But I know
Yep.
from some of the things that I've seen you teach that you're going to be able to come in and make even further improvements to that because I've taught everything I know to these students. But I know I even watching some of your recent webinars and whatnot, I'm like, oh wow, I learned a new thing from Max. I learned a thing or two that I haven't thought of before, which is like very rare, honestly. After doing this for 8 years and talking about networking for 8 years, I feel like I
Yeah.
know everything there is to know. But it's like no, this is also why it's great to have like a fresh set of hands come in and add to what we've already built, which is very good, but there's always room
Hmm.
for improvement, right? So I'm
Hmm.
excited about that. One more question for you on Wall Street Management, but like, what do you think separates, from your perspective, from as someone as like from the outside coming in, taking over,
Hmm.
but also as someone who candidly has like done a lot of coaching, and in a way, probably prior to this, like in a way, Wall Street Mastermind maybe was like one of your competitors, right? Because students can go and get coaching from you, or they can come and get coaching from us. They're probably not doing both, right? What do you think separates Wall Street Mastermind from other resources out there, based on what you've seen?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and funny enough, the way that I did first hear about this was through my students. And so I was coaching a couple people who were like, "Oh yeah, have you heard about this Wall Street Mastermind thing? Like, I've heard their program's incredible. Like, what's going on with that? Should I go sign up for that too?" Um, and so that was actually the reason that I first reached out to Sam, reached out to you, as you remember, back in the day. And so and the more I've learned, like the more convinced I am that this is the best program in the world. This is the first program in the market, and this is the premium place to be if you want to get a career on Wall Street. And as I've gotten deeper with the business, like there's three things that I think really help us stand out. The first is we've got the best coaches in the world. We've got heads of global recruiting at various investment banks. We've got really, really sharp people like Sam, and hopefully I can add some of that value too. And that's not really something you can quantify, but you'll feel it when you're in the inside. But the second thing is like I mentioned, this is the first program of its kind in the US to do this at the way we've done it. And we've just had more time to iterate, more times to refine those rough edges and continue to learn. And so, even though we do put everything we know into there, like networking is constantly changing, the industry is constantly changing. And so, we've had time to like update that and get it to this perfect machine almost of investment banking recruiting.
Yeah.
But probably the one of the coolest things I've seen and that Sam's told me about is the people that we get in the cohort. Because we have this premium brand and because people know us for that, we're able to select some of the best students who are recruiting every year. We're able to get them into this cohort. And so it becomes this incredible flywheel where we get the best students, they have the best outcomes, Wall Street Mastermind does well, and it repeats itself. And so people in our cohorts are working with the sharpest other kids on the street. And a lot of them, Sam tells me that sometimes they like stay in touch, they build friendships, they build relationships, and then they automatically get their networking done in the same way that like if you were to join a frat or a business club or like make friends in undergrad, now you have a group of Wall Street Mastermind bankers that you're close with for the rest of your career, hopefully.
Yeah. So I think those are really good points. We've always aimed to be the best program on the market. We never aim to be the cheapest program on the market, and sometimes we get criticized for that because some people don't want to pay for a premium program, and that's totally fine. Like we're not for everyone, right? Like
Mhm.
we are trying to be the iPhone. We're not trying to be, I don't know, Nokia or uh, whatever, Samsung or something, right? And an iPhone costs more. You know, we hire the best
It's not
coaches.
cheap to do what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, we have former global heads of recruiting at like top bulge bracket banks. Like those are not like the same, cheaper coaches that maybe other programs pay $50 an hour for or 80
Yeah.
bucks an hour for. We pay them a multiple of that, right? Because otherwise their time is so valuable, they wouldn't do it otherwise, right?
Mhm.
To your point on like iterating on the operations, iterating on how we fulfill on our service, um, it's like the iPhone, like the first generation iPhone that came out many, many, many years ago was
Mhm.
an iPhone. It was a phone, it was a smartphone versus the most recent iPhone that just came out is also an iPhone, but everything has changed about it. It's got
Yep.
more memory, it's faster, it's got better cameras, it's got way more apps in the App Store. It's just you might say, oh, these are both phones, or these are both iPhones, like, but why is this version so much better?
Mhm.
Um, that's the reason why. It's like the constant iteration over a very, very long period of time from working with thousands of students and figuring out what works, what doesn't work. A lot of these other programs out there have only been popping up recently, right? Like some of the older ones are like within the last 2 to 3 years, when we were already 5 or 6 years in. Some of them are like just starting to come out now. They're still on like the first generation iPhone stage, whereas we're on like the most recent generation. And candidly, a lot of them just try to imitate what we're doing, right? And it's fine to imitate, and I'm flattered, but candidly, if you're the imitator versus the innovator, um, you know, you already know which one is going to be the one that has the better quality, right? And
Mhm.
so, again, I think if you just want the best, if you want to shop based on quality, then that's what we believe we are. But so for some people, they want to shop based on cost or budget, which is fine to understand. Sometimes that's just like the reality of things.
Mhm.
But like I think for something as important as your career, this is what I always tell everyone. It's not a trivial purchase, right? If you're buying a house, if you're choosing a school, if you're even buying a car, like the important purchases, you usually want to shop based on quality, or you usually end up regretting it, right? You don't
Mhm.
want to penny pinch and try to like save a little bit of money here, like, oh, this other
Yeah.
program's $1,000 cheaper. It's like in the grand scheme of things, if like that ends up being a difference between you getting a better career or worse career, like was it worth? Did you really come out ahead because you saved $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever? Like, what are we talking about here, right?
Yeah.
Um, if I just get you a slightly better offer, even if you thought you could have gotten an offer with the other program. What if we
Mhm.
could have gotten you an even better offer?
Yeah.
How much is that worth over the next
Yeah.
several decades of your career? I don't know, but significant. Like multiple seven, if not eight figures in some instances. And I have the data to back that up, right? Like not my numbers, but like actual compensation data that I can show you if you're interested, right?
Mhm.
So that's why like our guiding North Star has always been just when we make decisions about the program, when we make decisions about how we charge, when we make all these decisions, it's always been guided by what do we need to do to be the best on the market. And the reason why I'm excited about Max is that I think he's going to come in and make this program even better. I think there are things that he can add to this program that, quite frankly, I can't. I've added everything I could possibly add into this program. I've given this everything. Like I don't hold anything back from my
Mhm.
clients, right? If there's anything that I think is going to give my clients an edge, I include it in the program because I want it to be successful, right?
Yeah.
One thing we didn't mention earlier is like Max was very involved in recruiting at all these different firms that he worked at. I think I mentioned like Qatalyst is one of the hardest firms to get into. One of the
Mhm.
most selective. I don't think they even have an application that they post publicly. Like you have to get referred by an employee that works there to even get the link to apply. And then like if you apply and you actually get an interview there, which a lot of our clients have gotten interviews there, I can tell you right now, we've seen the interview questions from every single firm out there. We've gotten people into every single bulge bracket, annually boutique bank, including Qatalyst. We have an interview questions database where our students submit the actual questions they get asked from all of
Mhm.
these firms so that our students can like go and check that and study off of that before they go into these interviews. I can tell you right now, Qatalyst has probably one of, if not the toughest technical interviews on the entire street. And
Yeah.
Max was the guy, you can thank him for this. He was the guy that helped them come up with the list of questions to ask in those interviews when he was helping out with the recruiting. So that's an example of what I mean when I say like Max is going to be able to make even more improvements to this program in a way that I'm not able to. And also Max has worked in the industry a lot more recently than I have, right? Like if you want to put me up against Max right now in terms of like let's do like a technical skills competition or whatever, he will blow me out of the water, right? And so just and Max like recruited recently. He was recruiting for private equity like as recently as like this month. And so like he's like actually not just teaching networking, but he's actively networking himself. And
Yeah.
so what are the latest strategies and tactics that he himself is using to have
Mhm.
success? Like I've been teaching networking for a long time, but I haven't had to actually like actively network for a very long time, right? And so like these are differences um, and things that I'm excited about that I think Max is going to bring to the program to make it just even that much better when we're already like best in class, right?
Right.
So I'm super excited for all of you, regardless of whether that's like those of you who are already in the program or those of you who are just like not in the program yet, but considering joining the program, or maybe you guys were thinking about joining the program before, but you're like, I'm not sure about this. I don't know about the Sam guy. Well, okay, now we have someone better coming in, and maybe that changes your mind, right? Um, so anyway, I just want to add that, but hopefully you guys can tell. Like I'm for those of you who know me, I'm a super direct and just like no BS type of guy. And I don't say anything I don't mean, but like I'm genuinely excited to be handing the baton over to Max, and I would not do this if I felt like I didn't find the right person, and if I felt like this was going to make Wall Street Mastermind worse, because this is my baby. This is like my first child. I've been doing this for 8 years with my blood and sweat and tears. I have two kids, but my older kid is 6, so I had Wall Street Mastermind first. This is like my firstborn child, basically, and I'm not just gonna put that in the hands of just anybody, right? So
Mhm.
hopefully, you guys obviously, especially for those of you that are already in program, you guys, I'm super grateful that you guys trusted me with something as important as your career, um, and I'm asking you to trust me again that I'm leaving you guys in good hands, right? In better hands than I would say you're already in. So, um, okay, last thing before we wrap up, I did have a couple more questions for you just to finish this off. But Max, looking back on your journey so far, starting out in Utah to get into Wall Street to now Stanford and Harvard,
Mhm.
you've accomplished so much. Um, what are you the most proud of?
Mm. That's a good one, Sam. So there's a lot of conventional things I could point to, and I could point to like, difficult acceptance rates at various banks and whatnot. And that matters. And like, I'm proud of that. But really it's not losing my roots throughout that process, because I've had a lot of friends where it's honestly a little sad to see the way that they change over the years. Like they take the intensity of the industry, and they that's their personality, and they give up on hobbies that they have. They lose touch of friends that they had, and they just become less happy of people.
Mm,
But one of the things that's really helped me stay connected is coaching, because every week, unlike a lot of my colleagues that have lost that route, like I get to be on the phone with people for 20 hours a week, and just like chatting with like young people who are scrappy and hungry and excited to break into this, and like I'm able to remember that feeling myself, and
mm,
remember how excited I was the first day I got into banking, got an offer, and like what that meant for me. And so I try to retain that. I try to feel the joy of the fact that I'm exactly where myself 10 years ago thought that I should be. And some days, honestly, I can't wake up, or I wake up and I just like, I can't believe that I'm here and that I'm doing this. And so I'm just unbelievably thrilled to be here with Wall Street Mastermind.
absolutely. If you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, 19-year-old self, whatever, um, what would you say to the younger version of yourself?
Yeah. Well, I remember as a 20-year-old, I was a little bit of a stress ball. I was just like running around, and I was doing everything at 100 miles an hour. And I still am, but like I even like timed down my morning routine to the second, where I was like, I have 2 minutes to take my shower, got to get the soap on, get it off dry. Like it was ridiculous. And so I think I probably would have said something to like the effect of like, okay, like just chill a little bit, take a deep breath. Like it's going to work out.
Mm,
But as I say that, I guess there's like a caveat to it, where to some extent that push and that drive and that fire was what enabled me to push and what enabled me to get there done. And so, yeah, don't stress. Like, be confident it's going to work out, but don't lose that fire either. Otherwise, you're not going to have the resolve to keep going when it gets tough. And that pain is hard, but it's temporary. We've talked about that. We've talked about how difficult this is, but that push you really, really need to get through. But just know that you will get through. You
mm,
will make it through, and you will be able to have so much more freedom on the other side of it. And that's a theme that we keep coming back to, because it's so true and it's so powerful.
yeah, for sure. And a lot of times you need that. You need to know that there's that light at the end of the tunnel when you're going through the process, because otherwise you kind of let go of the ropes and you give up, right? I've
Mhm.
seen that too with students. And so I think that's really, really good advice. Okay, last final question for you, because I know we've been talking to you for a very long time. Um, when students and parents watch this and they think, you know, I want someone like Max to guide me or guide my son or my daughter, what do you want them to know about who you are and
Mhm.
why you're doing this?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a really important question, because, like we were saying, the quality matters so much. Like, it matters so much whether you get someone who's able to really, really help you and understand your needs, versus if you work with a program that doesn't. And so the thing that I'll just say is like, I was doing this for free. I was doing this for free for most of the time I was doing it, because I love it that much. And it wasn't until I went to school and lost my PE salary, and had to take on these student loans, that I had to start charging for it, because there were so many people that wanted my time. There was so little time to have. And so over these years, like I've had well over 1,000 calls. And I think I just checked my tracker. It's like 1,500 networking and like mentorship calls over the last several years. And like, really, this is something that you do get better with over time. And so I will be able to take the immense experiences, not just of myself and not just of my friends, but of the thousands of people that I've helped and talked to and worked with over that time, and give you exactly what you need in that process. And so I really, really hope they'll have the chance to work with whoever's listening to this, because this is what I thrive off of, and this is what I'm good at. And frankly, like, there's nothing I'd rather be doing than help you specifically figure out what you need to do to get to the job that you're looking to have.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll just end this by saying I feel like I've said this in so many different ways already throughout this call, but if you guys, in case you guys still haven't picked this up, Max is the type of guy who uh, has always done exceptionally well uh, at everything he does. Um, Once he sets his mind on something and has a goal for himself. He's very intentional about how he goes about it, what he needs to do to be successful. And so I think it's amazing that from this point forward, he's made it his goal to turn Wall Street Mastermind into the best program that it could possibly be. Right? I'm not saying the best program on the market. I think we already are that, but the best program that can possibly be. Like, I think there's always room for improvement. Again, I'm not saying we're perfect, and he's going to make this thing even better. And based on his track record, and this is why I think it's so important to hire A players. Based on his track record, I have no doubt that he's going to be able to accomplish that. And so that is only going to benefit all of you, um, or those of you who are working with us, or even those of you who are not working with us. Max is going to be creating a ton of just content and, just giving out advice and stuff. And so, if you guys want to get that kind of stuff like free content and just recruiting tips and what's working and whatnot, make sure to follow us. Follow our YouTube channel, follow our Instagram, follow our TikTok, although that's still being more built out. Follow Max on LinkedIn. Um, Going forward, instead of seeing my face everywhere, you're going to be seeing Max's face, and you're gonna get all the. There's a lot of gold there that you're going to be able to learn. Um,
Mhm.
which will help you tremendously, regardless of whether you're working with us or not. Right? Obviously, we're going to be able to work a lot more hands-on with the students that are actually in our program. But regardless of whether you can afford our program or not, or want to join our program or not, like our goal is to just help as many people as possible.
Mhm.
Because recruiting is already hard enough as is, and again, we understand how life-changing this can be. So, anyway, I just want to say again to wrap this up, Max, I'm super excited to be handing this thing over to you. I am excited to see where you take this thing, what you do with it. Um, I'm excited to partner with you on this, and obviously pass on to you all the things that I've learned over the last 8 years, but also seeing how you apply your own spin to things and all the ideas and things that you bring to the table. A lot of which I haven't even thought of myself before, and so I'm just excited, and I'm thrilled to just have you take over the program and make it even better than it already is. So thank you for also taking a chance on this opportunity. And like I said, going off the beaten path. And just like I'm making a bet on you, I think you're also making a very big bet on us. And yeah, it's just a very exciting thing. So
Well, thanks, Sam. I really appreciate all the kind words over the last couple hours here that we've been talking, and I could not be more thrilled thrilled, humbled, and grateful for the opportunity to be working on this and building out your baby, like you said. So here's to the next 10 years of Wall Street Mastermind, helping thousands and thousands of students break into finance.
absolutely. All right, guys. I know it's been a long one, but it's an important one, and hopefully, it's been helpful, and insightful to you guys, and also inspirational. I think Max has a very inspirational story. So, thank you guys for tuning in. Uh, you know, we will. I guess I won't be back with more of these in the near future, but Max will be back with more of these in the near future, and we will continue to bring on more interesting people who have done amazing things, who started their careers on Wall Street, so that you guys can continue to learn from these amazing individuals. So make sure you continue to tune in to Wall Street Diaries, and until next time. All right, cheers.